Welcome to Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. The only podcast where it's okay to talk in band. On this podcast, you will be able to hear conversations with some of the greatest names in wind band conducting, composing, and arranging. We'll also visit with great college, high school, middle school, and elementary band directors to get their thoughts on various aspects of being a band director. We'll have regular check-ins with instrument specialists, music dealers, and instrument repair professionals. And if that's not enough, we'll even have regular conversations with Dr. Tim, who will help keep us motivated. That's Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. And now, here's Charlie.
Welcome to the inaugural podcast of Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. I'm so glad that you can join us today. Before we begin today's show, a little bit about how this podcast came to be. This past December, I was at the Midwest Clinic in Chicago and was speaking with my good friend Saul Friedgood, who is president of the Eastman Musical Instruments Company. And as we chatted, Saul said, "Charlie, I had this idea. I think you need to do a podcast for band directors." And I must admit, the idea intrigued me at first, and after giving it some thought and bouncing it off a few friends, I said, why not? Let's give it a try. So it's been about 3 months since the idea was planted, and I've been working on developing it since that time. Hopefully you will enjoy the format, and you will help me spread the word about Band Talk. Before we begin today, I want to thank some former students for their help in getting this thing off the ground. First, there's John Armato. John is a senior partner and creative strategist for Fleshman Hillard Public Relations in Sacramento, California. John is one of the most brilliant and creative people I've ever met in my entire life. And he was a drummer when I taught high school band at Winnetonka High School in North Kansas City, Missouri. And since that time, we have become dear friends. John is responsible for the show's ID and the catchphrase, "the podcast that finally makes it okay to talk in band." John will be appearing in a future podcast, and we'll get into the topic of how high school band prepared him for his great career in the corporate world. Also, I want to thank a couple of former students from Vandercook College of Music in Chicago. Aiden Albano teaches elementary band in the Palm Springs, California area, and he is the voice of Band Talk. And Matt Ingleson is the high school band director at Desert Hot Springs, California, also in the Palm Springs area, and he has been invaluable in helping me get the technical aspects in place. So let's get started talking in band. Today's podcast features 3 guests. We'll begin with Dr. Tim Lautzenheiser, who will give us a little insight on how he got started in music. Next, we'll have a feature conversation with Craig Kirchhoff, the retired director of bands at the University of Minnesota. And we'll wrap up today with Kevin Lepper, who will be providing great practical information to help your percussion sections succeed. That's Band Talk for today. We'll be right back.
Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, Eastman Musical Instruments, and Vandercook College of Music.
It is my distinct honor and pleasure to have joining today's podcast Dr. Tim Lautzenheiser. Dr. Tim is president of Attitude Concepts for Today. He is senior vice president at Conn-Selmer, director of education. He's a co-author of the Essential Elements book, and most importantly, he was my college band director. Dr. Tim, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks for asking me to do this, Charlie.
So what got you started in in school music?
Good question. Both mom and dad are musically talented. Mother in particular, because she was a tap dancing teacher. So I grew up with music around me all the time. My aunt was my piano teacher, so there was that. And it was just assumed you were going to be in the choir where I went to high school and in the band as well. So, when you find something that you're at least partially successful at, you head down that tunnel, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. So that was the direction. That was the leverage point with school and
what,
sure.
And what made you choose percussion or drums?
It was a bet. I wanted to play drums, and the deal was, okay, you got to learn to play piano. If you learn to play piano, then you can take percussion. So, and the other thing was that mom played really good piano. She plays by ear, still does. And so could dad. So they needed somebody to be a drummer in the background. And my dad had a little snare drum, and I was the drummer of the family.
Oh, that's great. And so tell me about your high school band experience.
I hope nobody's listening to this. Our high school band was miserable. Of course, we didn't know it, but when you look back now, you're like, oh, good Lord. The choir was the big thing in our school. I've told this several times. There was 212 in our high school after we consolidated, and there was 202 in Miss Sellers' choir.
Wow.
So she was the power base in the whole community. Yeah. Yeah. Great.
She was a Pied Piper.
She was. Right. Absolutely.
And so you graduated high school, and then you went to Ball State, and you worked under a director by the name of Earl Dunn.
Yep.
Got any memories of that?
Any scars? Mr. Dunn was certainly old school. And, and you too, we both grew up in families where your teachers were honored. Whether you agreed or didn't agree, you honored your teachers. And so, Mr. Dunn it was all or nothing with him. And so I said all, and he was really great too. He was really great. Out of nothing, he created this wonderful band program at Ball State. So I'm indebted to him for the rest of my life. He's my mentor. Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate enough at your insistence to take a class with him one summer, and it was just apparent that he insisted excellence. He insisted your best effort and excellence at all times.
Yep. Yeah. And even when that was there, it needed to be buffed a little bit more. Yeah.
So,
yeah, you know it.
Yeah, he was great. He was great, by golly. So you finished in New Mexico, and you went to work with Bands of America for a while, and then you started Attitude Concept. So I know you still get the opportunity once in a while to conduct an honor band, and if people don't know, I mean, you are an incredible musician and conductor, and I mean, you have a way of bringing out the emotion of the music, which is something that we need more of in our profession. But is there anything you really miss from the old band director days?
Oh, I miss making music. I miss standing on the podium and turning the phrase and getting that feeling when it locks down or is in the groove. It was the jazz band. Oh yeah, I miss that part and the student part of it too. I mean, that was huge. Not only the bricks but the mortar as well. Yeah, I miss it a lot. Yeah. I miss it a lot, really. If all I had to do was be a band director and just direct a band every period of the day, I would do it in a heartbeat right now.
Well, I think you're probably not alone in the world with that one. I think that may be one of the biggest frustrations of most teachers, that they get so caught up in all the educational minutia that they really don't have time to make music, And, so looking back, Tim, and I know we only got a minute or so left. Looking back, what kind of advice would you give a 16-year-old Tim Lautzenheiser right
now? You mean if they wanted to go into music?
Yeah, if they did or if they didn't, just looking ahead in their life.
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think it's generic. I think persistence alone is the key just to give up giving up. And you can add all the talent stuff and all that pieces of the puzzle. But I mean, you know it better than anybody, Bobo, that you just put your nose to the grindstone and you just keep it there. And you don't settle for less than the best. And even then, you're pushing that envelope all the time to make more out of it. I don't think there's any substitute for persistence wrapped in a really good positive attitude. I think it works everywhere. People skills, yeah? Yeah, that's the key.
Yep. And that's great advice. Well, Dr. Tim, I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today, and I hope that you'll be able to join us again real soon.
Thanks for asking me, brother. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
brother. Thank you. God bless. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Today's podcast is made possible through the support of Hal Leonard, publisher of the Essential Elements Method for Band and the Essential Elements interactive website that is free for Essential Elements users. Essential Elements Interactive, or EEI, is a state-of-the-art, cloud-based support program that is constantly evolving to provide you and your students with more information and resources to help them learn and have fun while doing so. To learn more about EEI, visit EssentialElementsInteractive.com.
It's a real honor to have my dear friend, Craig Kirchhoff, joining Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends this morning. Craig, welcome to the podcast, and I hope things are well in Minnesota.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's a typical winter day in Minnesota. It's about 7 degrees outside, but happily beautiful blue, sunny skies. So it's, like I said, a typical day here, but a beautiful day.
Well, summer's coming. Every day gets one day closer, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, all of us in Minnesota, we're the optimistic sorts. And so we look forward to the summer months coming. But, you know, when you live in Minnesota, you have to find enjoyment in being outside and enjoying the winter months. So that's why many of us cross-country ski and snowshoe, and there are those who actually go ice fishing, which I don't do. But, you know, people learn how to enjoy life in the winter and then wait for the summer.
Yeah, well, you grew up in the Midwest, didn't you? You grew up in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I did. So in a sense, I'm a winter person. So, you know, moving back to the Midwest here, upper Midwest, for me, it was like coming home. So, yeah, it feels very comfortable. It feels like home to me.
So you grew up in Wisconsin, and you were 16 years old going to high school somewhere. So when you were 16, what did you want to do?
Well, you know, I was very involved in music. I think at that point in my life, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I just enjoyed playing my flute, and I was a member of the Music for All, not Music for All, but, oh gosh, can't remember it now, the name, but a youth orchestra in Milwaukee. That was really a terrific youth orchestra. And you know, I just had never encountered music like that before with great players like that. So I knew I enjoyed playing music and I enjoyed playing my flute, but I think back in my mind, I really wanted to fly for a career. I was fascinated by flying, and that came from my father. And in fact, when I was in college, or just right after school, I earned my private pilot's license. And then, as luck would have it, you know, my eyes didn't cooperate, and so that part of the dream ended. But and that's when I really became serious about music. And what I did at school is I double majored. So I majored in music ed, and I was a performance had a performance degree as well. So, and somehow I did that in 4 years. But you know, I was in school every summer. But you know, I enjoyed being in school, and so but that became my goal. Was music became, you know, something that I wanted to do without a doubt.
So you went to the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and then
That's right.
And then once you graduated from there, where did you go?
Yeah, well, I taught immediately in the Milwaukee Public Schools. I taught at John Marshall Junior Senior High School, which, strangely enough, was the school where I actually went to school. So I inherited this wonderful band program from my hero, my own band director, Michael Yindra. So, and just prior to that, just for about 4 months, my first job in Milwaukee, I taught at Wells Junior High School, which was at that time the most transient inner city school in Milwaukee. And then I had to go on active duty in the Army for the Army Reserves, and so I was gone for 4 months, and then I returned and found out that I was assigned to John Marshall Junior Senior High School, and then I was there for a solid 3 years.
And then from there you went to?
Well, when I was at teaching at John Marshall Junior Senior High School, I was the happy band director because it was a wonderful facility, a wonderful school, wonderful students, and I was the only band director. Those are the days when we didn't have assistants, and typically there were over 300 students in the band program. So I was a busy guy, but what I loved about my job is that I could do my job during the day and enjoyed that, and enjoyed working with students. And then I did a lot of professional playing in Milwaukee. And so my goal was to continue teaching and to continue doing what I was doing. And then a friend of mine, Rick Aaron, Rick and I were in grade school together. And I actually studied saxophone with his father, Joseph Aaron, who was a very, very famous musician in Milwaukee. But Rick and I started in flute class together. And Rick called me one day and mentioned the fact that there was a conducting symposium at the University of Wisconsin, and Frederick Fennell was the clinician, and there were only 2 flute players, and they really needed 3. So he said, "Why don't you come up and play in the group, and we'll just have a good time." And so I went to Madison, having no idea that trip would change my life, because what happened was I played in the lab band that was used to work with all of these conductors, and then seeing Frederick Fennell teach and seeing him conduct, I quickly realized that although I thought I was a pretty good conductor, that I really had no idea what I was doing. I mean, he just opened up a whole new window into what conducting was, and he had a way that was magical of just getting people to play for him. And of course, every score he did from memory, and that was a whole new experience for me. But it was his infectious ability to get people to play at a level that was probably way above the group potential. And I just thought to myself, I have to figure out how to be able to do that. And so one thing led to another. So I eventually decided that I need to go back to graduate school to figure this out.
So then you went to graduate school at the University of Wisconsin?
Yeah, I did. And Bob Reynolds accepted me as a graduate student. This is back in 1975. But coincidentally, that was the same year that he went to the University of Michigan. So, in fact, although I've always considered Bob to be my teacher and mentor, I never really studied officially with him. So, Bob did not have assistantships open at Michigan, and there was just no way that I could afford out-of-state graduate tuition at the University of Michigan. So, I stayed at Wisconsin for several reasons, because number one, Eugene Corporon became my teacher of record, and Eugene was a great resource, a great teacher. And then I had extraordinary experiences, because they didn't really replace Bob. They just moved Eugene up, and then I was able to conduct a symphonic band for the majority of the year, and boy, that was trial by fire, because I had never worked with players that were that capable, and you learn quickly. But it was a great experience there. So my time in Madison was spent with Eugene, and then I did all of my score study work with their great choral conductor, Robert Fountain, who was an incredible inspiration to me. So I was a very lucky guy to be there at a very unique time, although, I obviously regretted that I couldn't study with Bob. And then the additional bonus to all of that is I think Fred Fresnel was in residence for almost 8 weeks throughout the year. So that's where I really got to know Fred, and we began this lifelong friendship, and he was a great source of inspiration, and he too is a great teacher.
So you graduated from Wisconsin, and then you had a distinguished career at the Ohio State University. I guess I need to say the. And then you went on to the University of Minnesota, and you retired a couple of years ago at Minnesota. Are you officially retired now? Everything done?
Yeah, I stepped down as director of bands in 2015. My retirement concert was on April 26th of 2015. But then I did a 3-year phased retirement because I just didn't want to completely stop. And also, I felt very strongly that I wanted to devote those 3 years to teaching conducting at the undergraduate level, which I really didn't do at Minnesota. And just the way the program was set up, I just felt at Minnesota that I didn't have real contact with the music education majors. And so that was one way, by teaching undergraduate conducting, that I felt I could reach out and be a part of their lives and provide some mentorship to them. And so I did that for 3 years. And so as of May of 2018 now, I'm officially retired and severed from the university.
But you're flunking retirement really well, because you're always on the road doing conducting workshops and clinics and things like that. So you're doing a great job of flunking retirement, Craig. I want you to know that.
Yeah, well, I've heard that from other people, principally my wife and my siblings, who are continually wondering why I'm doing what I'm doing. But the fact of the matter is, I really enjoy teaching, and I really enjoy interacting with people, and so in a sense, although I no longer work at the university, I'm still continuing my teaching career, and I think it would be difficult. I mean, at some point, I'll make the decision to do less and spend more time doing some other things. But you get to a point in your career, and although I don't have everything figured out, and there's a lot to learn continuously, I almost feel like I'm doing some of my best teaching. So I just didn't feel like I wanted to give that up, and I derive a great deal of satisfaction from that. And frankly, it's my way of giving back to a profession that's been very wonderful to me in so many ways. So yeah, I enjoy what I'm doing, despite the fact that I flunked retirement.
Yeah, well, you're at a position now where you're kind of like a grandparent. You can go in and work with the kids and the young people, and then when you leave, you don't have to go to faculty meetings or do reports or do anything like that. So, that has to be a real bonus. And I'm sure you don't miss any of that paperwork and bureaucracy that comes along with a teaching position at any level, right?
Yeah, that's very true. I don't miss any of that. And the bureaucracy, I think, has just gotten worse. It's just and the paperwork has become very onerous, and so it's that part of my professional life. I'm just glad that that's in the past.
So when you're working with these young conductors and young teachers throughout the world, what are you seeing from them?
Well, I still see the same passion that, I saw 20 years ago. I mean, and it gives me great hope. I mean, I'm very fortunate that, for instance, in my last years, not my last years at Minnesota, but, for a long time we did a summer symposium. And one of the things that I did with the summer symposium is I instituted a fellowship program, which was designed to attract, maybe 12 to 15 undergraduate students who could, in a sense, become a part of the symposium and, in a sense, join the profession and learn before they had actually graduated. And I was always inspired, as were other people in the symposium, by the kind of energy that they brought, by the kind of excitement that they brought. I mean, they loved music and they wanted to teach. And these were students, I think, that loved people. And those are three things that are, I think, essential to any successful teacher. So, I sense from people today those same kinds of passions. I think I'm still impressed by them, and I'm impressed by their dedication to the profession. And of course, when I see them at symposiums, I'm impressed by their desire to continue to learn, and I think that's absolutely critical for a music educator.
So over our course of our lifetime, the whole thing about conducting symposiums and studying conducting has really evolved. And do you equate the start of that being Frederick Fennell or someone else, or how did that movement begin?
Well, I think it started with Fred, really, and then there were other people like Bob Reynolds and Eugene Corporon and Donald Hansberger and Frank Battisti who, really guided the profession in a very different way. And I think what I mean by that is I think that those were people, and I would include John Painter in that, who looked at the wind band profession as a serious art form. And therefore, I think that, when I was growing up, there was maybe one or two of these conducting symposiums. And now there must be 20, 30 all over the country, and I think they're all good. My only concern about that is that, to me, physical conducting, I think about the life of the conductor, and it's like a pyramid or a triangle, and at the bottom, a big part of the bottom part of that pyramid is your musicianship, your quality as a human being, and maybe that upper middle part is your knowledge of repertoire, your knowledge of pedagogy. And then way at the top of the triangle is this thing called physical conducting. And sometimes I worry about the fact that I think that sometimes people are enamored with how a conductor looks. And to me, first of all, conducting is a listening art. It's not really a movement art, although we have to move. But, the bottom line is how the group sounds. And so, God forbid, I could lose my eyesight and still be a good conducting teacher, because how the group sounds is everything. And conducting is just a language to get to that ultimate goal or that ultimate standard of music performance more efficiently and more quickly. And there are just simply things that you can't express in words, that only, that nonverbal communication can get that across.
Yeah, you raise a really good point there. When John Painter was in his later years in life, and John was one of the real legends of this whole profession. He had really put on quite a bit of weight. And I heard one of our colleagues, who will remain nameless for this podcast, our conversation here, say that, John Painter couldn't conduct his way out of a paper bag, and what they meant by that is he couldn't move. He was so limited in his movement, but his groups were like some of the best in the world. And that was because he was such an incredible musician himself. And the knowledge of the score and what he brought to the podium and his personality far overwrote any limitations he may have had physically. Yeah,
absolutely. If the wonderful thing about the the era that we're living in, with YouTube and everything else, and the things like the Berlin Philharmonic Digital Concert Hall. I mean, you can look at some of the great conductors in the world who are known for their music making, and the first thing you might say to yourself is, that person should go to a conducting symposium, because it's not. What is so inspiring about these people is their intent in their inner image of the music that they just have to get across, and they do it whatever way they can. And so it's that musicianship. It's the musicianship that motivates and inspires everything else. And so it doesn't work the other way around. I mean, you can, and we've all seen the two extremes of conductors. There's the one conductor who, you listen to their ensemble and it's unbelievable, which means that person is a great teacher, a great pedagogue. But then you watch them conduct, and you just can't watch them because it's so contradictory to what the music is doing. And then there's the other person on the other end of the spectrum who, moves like an angel, who moves like Seiji Ozawa, but the group is horrible, So the truth is somewhere in the middle of those two extremes. And but it's really the musicianship and the knowledge of the repertoire that motivates all of that.
Yeah, that word unbelievable is one of those, two-edged swords where you can say that it's unbelievable that the group sounds like that, and that could be really good or really bad, But I trust you were using it in a good sense there.
Well, what I'm saying is that, there's some people in the profession who just believe that, well, conducting isn't important. And all I'm saying is that conducting is a language that allows us to get to the essence of the music more quickly, rather than having to stop and talk about it. Because everyone knows groups want to play. They don't want to stop. They want to continue playing. And the more efficient the conductor can be, the more, if you will, the more words that conductor has in their thesaurus, the more language. I mean, the more quickly they're going to get to the actual meat of the music. And so it's just a matter of it's the efficiency of the communication. And like I said, there are just things. I mean, words are really inadequate vessels to carry real emotional meaning. My friend Bud Byer, who you know very well, always said that to move people emotionally, you have to move them physically. There has to be a physical response. And so the physicality of the conductor is what inspires that in players. So it's just a matter of being able to speak with the question would be is, our youngest son, John, when he was a baby, had a very limited vocabulary. I mean, he just couldn't express himself. And so the question is, do you want the vocabulary of a 1-year-old as a conductor, or do you want to have a vocabulary of a Shakespeare? And obviously the answer is you want to have the vocabulary of a Shakespeare so that you have multiple options in your toolkit to use to express something. But it's just a language. That's what it is.
So do conductors need to practice their physical conducting like I would have practiced my trumpet as a trumpet major, or you practiced your flute as a flute major?
Yeah, I believe so, and especially earlier in their careers. I think that, and when I think about conducting pedagogy and then I think about all of that, I immediately think of Elizabeth Green, who I think may have been the greatest teacher of all time. But her knowledge of conducting, her ability to teach that and to build skills through exercises and that were meant to be practiced. So much of what she did in her conducting books, The Modern Conductor, was to give us etudes so we could express the music. And so conductors have to do that. conducting is an applied art. And this is part of the problem, I think, in the professional world where, you take the great instrumentalists of the world who are known as great artists on their instruments, and then suddenly they think they can conduct. And it oftentimes doesn't work out very well because they don't have the physical technique to be able to communicate that because they haven't practiced their conducting skills, if you will. So, conducting is an applied art just like playing trumpet is or playing flute is. I mean, there's practice involved. And as time goes on, I think it shifts a little bit. So perhaps there's less time spent on the etudes and more time spent in score study and really coming to grips with the intellectual and the emotional content of the music.
So let's change direction here a little bit. You mentioned you were teaching in high school in Milwaukee, and then you obviously went through your degree program and you taught at the university level. So how has the repertoire changed during your lifetime?
Oh, it's changed enormously. I mean, when I think back to when I was in high school, I graduated from high school in 1967. I mean, it was a very, very limited repertoire. And there's literally been this explosion of repertoire, which in a sense is a wonderful thing that's happened. It's also provided, I think, some real challenges because, it's hard for me to believe that every year there are 2,000 to 3,000 new band pieces that come on the market. And then the question is, well, what goes to the wayside of the traditional repertoire to make room for that? And then are all of those works truly meritorious pieces of music that are going to stand the test of time and become a part of the repertoire? So, in a sense, I think that the opportunities, or I should say that the resources for repertoire now are so much greater than they were in the past. And it's even getting better, I think, for the middle school groups. And, there are various initiatives that have made a difference. So, BandQuest, although every piece in that BandQuest series may not always be possible to be played by a middle school group, there are a lot that are. So I think about a piece like Old Churches of Michael Colgrass, which is just a beautiful work for younger bands. And so I still think we have work in that area. And we have to be evangelists at every level to help teachers make the right decisions about repertoire, because when you boil it down, repertoires are curriculum. And we're so lucky to be able to have the ability to make those choices, but it's absolutely critical that we make those right choices. And, over the years, I've come to believe three things definitively. One is that every student, at whatever age level they are, has the capacity to be moved by music. I've seen that, through my wife's teaching with fifth graders, obviously through middle school, high school, and college students, but they have that ability to be moved by music. The other thing that I've come to believe without a doubt is that, they need us. They need us as teachers to move them from the love of the activity of being in band or orchestra or choir to a true love of music. Because, the reality is, I don't think any fifth grader joins band for an aesthetic experience. They do it because it's fun. They do it because their friends are doing it. They're doing it because, it's magical, this instrument that take out of the case and make sounds with. But they need us to move them from that love of the activity to a real love of music. And then the third thing, which goes back to what we were talking about before, is that we have to provide them with the best possible repertoire to study and to learn from. So
Well, Craig, I so appreciate you being with us today, and hopefully, can we continue this conversation in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Craig Kirchhoff, thank you so very much for joining us today, and we hope to talk to you again real soon, okay?
All right. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Craig. Craig Kirchhoff, everyone. Incredible musician, retired director of bands from the University of Minnesota, international artist, great human being.
Vandercook College of Music is proud to support Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. Vandercook is the only college in the nation solely devoted to the practical education of the school music teacher. If you have a student who wants to teach music, or if you or someone you know is looking for a great, practical Master of Music education program, then look no further than Vandercook College of Music in Chicago, Illinois. Vandercook also has the largest array of on-campus and online classes in their Mecca continuing education program. For more information, visit vandercook.edu.
Joining us for this segment of Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends is my dear friend, a guy that I've known for over 45 years, maybe 50 years, I'm not sure. Kevin Lepper, Mr. Percussion. Kevin, how are you doing?
We're doing good today, Charlie.
And you're surviving the winter okay? You're getting through it?
We're getting through the winter. We actually have a little bit easier because we winter down here in Austin, Texas, so don't have to deal with all that snow. But boy, we've done that before.
Oh, that's great. Well, we hope that you're having a great time. So, Kevin, this is a new podcast that we're starting, and hopefully we can have you on from time to time to talk about all things percussion. And there's nobody that I know who was more effective and did a better job teaching people to play percussion, whether they had experience or not, than you. And so it's wonderful that you'll share your experience with us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was very nice words.
So one of the things, Kevin, when we work together is that I always noticed that your area was always spotless. I mean, we could see different areas of the building at Vandercook and they had their things there. But when we went to the percussion area, it was spotless. And when you go into a rehearsal with your percussion section, everything was in place. So from your perspective, how does an organized percussion area impact the mindset of your students?
Well, the first thing is the common perception of percussionist is that we don't have the right implements, we lose our sticks, we lose our music, we're disorganized. And I always thought that if everything was neat and organized back there, that was just a way to promote and to show the students on a daily basis, look, you don't have to be that type of person. You can actually be the person who is organized. So that was sort of my way of dealing with it. And also I work from being neat. So, in the middle of rehearsal, when you would say, can we try another set of cymbals? There really wasn't time to be searching around for all the cymbals. We had to pretty well know where they were at that time in order for the rehearsal to be effective. So those are some of my reasons for trying to be neat and organized in the percussion section.
So, Kevin, when you get into the advanced repertoire, wind ensemble repertoire and things like that, they'll call for 3 or 4 players, and the composer meticulously lays out a map that they want the marimba here, and next to the marimba, they want the trap table, and they want these instruments on the trap table. You think there would be any benefit for directors to make a little chart for, say, elementary students, middle school students, when they have a piece of music and here's how the percussion section should be set? Would there be any help for those kids if they did that?
Oh, absolutely. I think that should be done at all levels. That not only helps in rehearsals, but it also helps in performances. We would always lay a game plan out, or a plan for where every percussion instrument would be for every concert. So during the concert, I would know that I could reach right over here and pick up my set of maracas. Or when I set my mallets down, then the next player who needed those mallets knew that they were going to be there. I think that's a must, and it will certainly keep the percussionists organized back there. So, because nothing's worse than you're in the concert and you reach for the instrument and it's like, oh, it's not there. And then that sort of snowballs for everybody. So I take somebody else's mallets, and then they take somebody else's mallets, or the triangle beaters aren't there. So yeah, I think planning out what is each workstation, that's just a must.
So, you talk about mallets and beaters and all that sort of thing. So percussionists over time develop this incredible toolbox, if you will, of sticks and mallets and accessories that they carry with them. So if I'm starting a beginner out, what's the basic equipment they should have?
Well, first of all, I want to address why that's so important. Is everybody else has their instrument. Like you would walk in and you would have your trumpet. Well, many times the percussionists don't have the access to bring their instrument into a rehearsal. And so that sort of makes us feel a little bit outside. Everybody else has their instrument that they're carrying. I don't have anything. So just by having a stick bag with their sticks in it, that sort of brings them into the game and says, look, I got stuff to bring to this too. So I think it's really important. The other point is that if I have my own sticks and mallets, I'm going to treat them so much better than using somebody else's. Now I have skin in the game. I actually have my stuff that I have to take care of. So I think that's an important reason to have those instruments. So now to answer your question, I would say you need to have a stick bag, obviously, to carry everything in. And I would start out, depending on how you start your students, mallets or snare. I would have a good pair of snare drum sticks and a pair of mallets. That's sort of a must. And with the snare drum sticks, I would get a very, very general stick. I always use the Vickford SD1. And if I had smaller hands, like the junior high level, the SD1 juniors are a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter. So what I liked about the sticks is they had a wood bead. So as the student was trying to develop their rolls, it would be easy to roll with. It also separated those sticks from their drum set sticks. So they're not banging their concert sticks on drum set and ruining those. So they're starting to understand that, look, there are different implements for different instruments. And then a pair of mallets, I would use just a medium yarn pair of mallets. Numerous companies have these, but a medium yarn mallet works well on xylophone. They can play it on marimba. They can play it on vibes. So it's sort of a universal mallet. From there, if you wanted, and as they go on during their career as percussionists, they would want to add on a little bit at a time. So, the addition of a good pair of timpani mallets. As they got older in high school, they'd want to add in maybe a pair of brushes, a pair of marching sticks, then maybe add some more mallets. So that when they get done, they have their set of mallets that will basically get them through anything. So if they join a community band, they have their implements to play those instruments.
You mentioned that they would have their snare drum sticks and they would have their drum set sticks. As a trumpet player, I'm going like, really? I mean, what's the difference between a set of snare drum sticks and a set of drum set sticks?
Well, every pair of sticks has a different sound. And so when you see all these sticks on the market, and there are hundreds of them, if you were actually just to play those on a drum set or on snare drum, they would sound different. So, so basically the difference between a drum set stick, it's going to be made out of a much harder wood, and the end is going to be tapered, and the beat is going to be different because you want to hear that ping off of the ride cymbal and off of the drums. Whereas in a concert stick, it's going to be more of a rounded bead or an oval bead, which is going to give you a softer sound, let you play your rolls. But the big main difference is the wood it's actually made out of. The drum set stick is supposed to be made out of really hard stuff that takes the beating when you're playing hi-hat or you're playing right cymbal drums, things like that.
Kevin, I learn something from you every time I talk to you. So thanks for being with us, and we'll hope to do this again real soon, okay?
Oh, that sounds great. Hope it helps you out.
Thanks, Kevin. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. If you would like to send a question to Charlie or have a comment, please send an email to bandtalkcharlie@gmail.com. We hope you will let your colleagues, students, and friends know about Band Talk with Charlie Menghini and friends. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again soon.